For a while, I was interested in collecting the ones that seemed the most precious. Through email, I would correspond with people in Canada, Ohio, or the Netherlands, people who were interested in the marks with tassels or Victorian designs. For the sake of the collection, I became interested in tassels and Victorian designs as well. So I found myself dealing with a lot of older women who were probably housewives, and usually they seemed pretty well off. Most of them had been collecting the marks for their entire lives. We'd swap marks, but they got really tired of swapping with me because my marks were usually pretty generic. No one was going to send me a fringed silk bookmark in exchange for a Barnes & Noble. Not that I was personally invested in the fancy tasseled bookmarks, I just wanted to maintain the integrity of the collection. I had a few collections when I was a kid. For a while I collected baseball cards because I liked baseball. But the game itself was more exciting than the cards, and I quit collecting after a year or so. But I became interested again in college, having matured in my approach to creating a collection. I was beginning to understand that the key to a formidable collection is complete indifference to the objects being collected. Collectors who collect things that actually interest them are destined for disappointment. A collection can never replace an experience. If you like baseball, go to a baseball game, or try throwing a ball around in the backyard. In college, I started out by choosing things that meant nothing to me, making my choices as arbitrarily as possible. Antique chopsticks or spray bottles, used baseball trophies or rare pushpins. I would learn the strange histories of the collectibles and become an expert in determining which ones were worth saving and which ones weren't. But I've always hated elitist collectors, the greedy purists who use the price guide as a Bible. Yeah, hi, I'm calling about the bookmark. Yeah, I know you already have one of these bookmarks, but... No, I know. But the one I'm trying to sell comes with a sheath. There's nothing original about a collection that has its value and merit designated by a book. There are two types of collectibles in my mind. Things that have a use value and things that are entirely useless. I agreed to go to a bookstore with a friend on a Thursday afternoon after I got off the job. Her name was Emily, and I knew her because she used to collect baseball trophies like me. The bookstore sold old, used books. I like books and I owned a few, but I could never consider my books a collection. I noticed that Emily wasn't looking for a particular book. She was examining every one. She was looking to swipe bookmarks, and that's how I got involved. Some of my best bookmarks were later found at used bookstores. I went to rummage sales and started swapping with people over the internet, but I couldn't compete with the Canadian and Norwegian housewives. Their collections must have been passed down to them, generation to generation. But for whatever reason, there weren't too many Americans interested in the bookmark trade. I had no leverage in the bookmark subculture, no collateral to bargain with, so I began to reconsider why I was drawn to bookmarks in the first place. More than any other object, bookmarks toe that same line between usefulness and uselessness. I mean, it's usually only a piece of paper or card or whatever. Most people don't even use the things. They fold back the pages or mark it with a scrap of newspaper or something. Even after I started collecting them, I would still sometimes use scraps of paper to mark the page of my book. The mass-produced markers seem almost pointless. They're just fancy scraps of paper. They're almost nothing. And I guess that's what makes them almost everything. But a bookmark can be one of the most convenient things in the world too. Have you ever lost your mark and tried to commit to memory the page you were at in a book? I've never been able to remember a number for more than 3 minutes. A famous movie director once said, "Why pay $1 for a bookmark if you can use the dollar as a bookmark?" And that makes a lot of sense. So I began thinking that although I don't have any fancy Elizabethan bookmarks, I can create a library of common bookmarks. I don't need to deal with bourgeois European collectors. I can take my marks off the corners of old newspapers, from the business section of the phone book. There's a living, breathing collection of bookmarks at the fingertips of anyone smart enough to take notice. I never collected things because I didn't have anything else to do. But I think that may be the motivation for many collectors. But I work a job, and I enjoy a good book. I like to cook nutritious meals, and I'm pretty good at the guitar. The bookmark business has always been a burden. I've spent a lot of money buying bookmarks and finding storage for them. It's really important to keep a nice carrying case for your bookmarks. That's one of the most important things about maintaining a nice, sort of pristine bookmark collection. And it's nice to get a case where the sizes of the holes correspond nicely to the size of the bookmark. There's an old saying that goes, if a horse has wings and it flies, why not just call it a bird? I applied this logic to my collection, and soon my collection was collecting itself, working for me. I realized that practically everything in my apartment could be used as a bookmark, and anything that can mark a page can be seen as a bookmark. And not just things that fit between the pages of a book. You can always prop a book on the larger things in your living space. I wasn't going to let some European determine the value of my bookmarks. My mind had opened, and for me there was a world of marks far more interesting than some archival scraps. Some things are admittedly more convenient than other things, but nearly everything gets the job done. No longer did I need to search for the marks or even cut them out from scraps of paper. I simply needed to recognize an item as a bookmark in order to deem it part of my collection. In order for my collection to grow, I needed more stuff. The job wasn't doing much more than paying the bills, so I devised what I felt was a clever scheme. I decided to turn my apartment into a non-profit bookmark museum. I'd filled out the necessary forms and written a beautiful mission statement. I wrote a brief history of the most substantial objects in the room and took photographs of the objects functioning as bookmarks. I made some labels as well. I decided to name my organization the Working Man's Museum of the Common Bookmark. I applied for tax-exempt status, and surprisingly, it was granted. Anything I intended to buy for my apartment in the future could be written off on my taxes. I soon began charging a small admission fee to the people who would knock on my door during regular business hours, Monday to Friday, noon to 6. I put up flyers on bulletin boards around the city and ended up quitting my day job from the revenue earned. After a few months of work, I was able to add to my collection freely and regularly. I have a meeting with an auditor next month, but I'm fairly confident she'll see the inherent value in making my collection available to the public.